If you're a job seeker, you probably already understand that there's this terrible automated bad guy standing in between you and that next great job. And that terrible automated bad guy has a name: applicant tracking system, or ATS, or sometimes the dreaded black hole. But what most people don't understand is exactly what the ATS is, how it works, and what you need to do so you make it through this stage of the process and move on to human reviewers. So how in the heck are you going to dial up some great strategy, one that gives you a leg up on the competition and gets the attention of the people at the company that you want to work at, if you don't even really realize how this game works? I'm Jenny Foss. I'm a job search strategist, recruiter, certified professional resume writer, and the voice behind the career blog, jobjenny.com. I've worked on both sides of the ATS. I know how recruiters use them, and I also understand what job seekers need to do in order to make sure they're creating a resume that passes through the applicant tracking system. We're going to dive in and unlock the mysteries here. We're going to talk about how to craft a strong ATS-friendly resume, and we're going to talk about some networking strategies that you can weave into your overall job search that might enhance your efforts. So let's get started. Knowing that the applicant tracking system exists is obviously really important, but you also need to get how this technology works. If you don't know what you're up against, obviously it's going to impact your success ratio. So let's discuss what is the ATS. In simple terms, the ATS is a software that allows companies to efficiently manage and track candidates. It makes their hiring process more consistent and helps them stay in compliance with labor laws. So when you apply for a job online, what exactly happens? Typically, the ATS is pulling in all of the applicant files and parsing your information into data fields. It's then going to scan all of those data fields and decide who the best matches are for any given job. If that system dubs you a strong match, you move forward. If it doesn't, dunzo. So what are the most important factors when it comes to getting a strong match score? Number one is keywords. You need to make sure the most prominent keywords and buzzwords from that job description are front and center in your resume. Number two is titles. So the ATS is going to be looking for candidates that have same or similar or obvious progressive titles. So let's say you're applying for a job as a marketing manager, and you are one, however, your company calls you content manager. So long as it's honest to do so, I would change your title on the resume to marketing manager. That will not only make it easier for the layman to understand your job, it's going to give you a stronger match score with the ATS. Number three is degree. If a job states that they require a bachelor's degree and you don't have one, I wouldn't apply for that job through the ATS or through the online application process. Simply put, you're not going to have a strong match score. Now, that doesn't mean you can't apply for that job, but you're going to have to find another way to get the attention of that organization. And number four, resume structure. The ATS is going to have a hard time reading your resume if you go too far outside of the box in terms of structure, fonts, graphics, photos. So you're going to want to keep it straightforward. So really what this comes down to is, if you're going to play this game, and most of us are going to play the game of applying for jobs online, understand how to play it so you can give it your best shot. Keywords are a major influencer when it comes to whether or not the ATS is going to identify you as a strong match. Heck, it's a major issue when it comes to whether or not the humans are going to identify you as a strong match. For that reason, you've got to get this right. By weaving in relevant keywords into your resume, you're not only maximizing the odds that the ATS will see you as a strong fit, you're also maximizing the odds that a recruiter who's going to be screaming through a pile of applicant resumes will also see you as a strong fit and ask you to come in for an interview. I recommend the following exercise. Print out a copy of the job description and grab 3 different color highlighters. You're going to go through that job description 3 times. The first time through, identify all of the hard skills that they're looking for. These are things like AutoCAD or P&L management or project management. Highlight all those hard skills that you see. Now get the second color highlighter and you're going to go through that job description looking for soft skills. Those are things like troubleshooting, curiosity, cross-functional collaboration, and so forth. And then with that last color, you're going to highlight all the action verbs that you see. Things like collaborate, grow, troubleshoot, lead, develop. Now, if you don't have a job description, you can go through the same exercise using emails that you've exchanged with the recruiter, any notes that you have on the position, etc. And lacking any of that, try going over to LinkedIn and finding someone at that organization with the same or a similar job title. Look at what their key skills are. Look at how they're describing their job and their performance. And then use that to inform your decisions on what you're going to weave into your resume. Now, I very specifically am using that term weave in. I'm not suggesting that you just dump a bunch of keywords into your resume. You want to thoughtfully weave them into your narrative so that when this resume gets to the human reviewer, it's a solid read. There's a lot more to the ATS than just identifying which keywords to use. I know. I never said that this was like some friendly bouncer that just lets everybody into the club. In fact, 70 to 75% of applicant resumes get screened out by the applicant tracking system. Now, that's not meant to discourage you. We're going to situate you so that you're in that 25 to 30% that move on in the process. So what are those other things that the applicant tracking system is looking for that you need to factor in? Number 1, job title. Now, this one can be a little bit tricky. Say you're going after a job as a marketing manager, and by and large, that's the role that you've got right now. But your company calls it something like, I don't know, content manager. As long as it's honest to do so, I would call yourself marketing manager or content manager / marketing manager on that resume. That way you're going to look like a stronger match and you're going to make it easier for the human reviewer to understand how you connect. Number 2, certificates and licenses. If the job description lists any among the required credentials, you've got to list them on your resume. And if that certification is listed out by some acronyms, so say for instance, you're a project management professional and the job description is calling it PMP, make sure you're using PMP on your resume. So again, that match is detected by the scanning software. Number 3, educational requirements. If you have a job description that states a particular degree, say a bachelor's degree, is required for this job, and you happen to have an associate's degree, you're not going to look like a strong match in the eyes of that software. Now, That doesn't mean you can't apply for this job, but you're probably going to be best served by finding an in at that organization and applying directly. Applicant tracking systems are black or white, yes or no. Humans, however, they can detect gray areas, so you want to get to them directly. In short, the more you understand what the applicant tracking system is looking for, the better equipped that you're going to be to structure your resume in a way that has you sail right on through that software and move forward in the process. ATS technology has come a long way in recent years, but it is still far from perfect. And some companies are still using the old technology. Knowing that, you're going to do yourself a huge favor if you create an ATS formatted resume. What does this mean? Essentially, it means create something that strips away all the bells, the whistles, the fancy formatting, the photos, the graphics, you name it, so that when it goes through that system, the ATS can properly read and parse your information. Here are 3 things that I recommend when it comes to formatting your ATS-friendly resume. Number 1, tables and columns. Simply put, I'd leave them off, and here's why. The ATS reads top to bottom, left to right. And so if you've got multiple columns set up or tables embedded inside of the resume, that could disrupt its ability to properly read and segment your information into the data files. Now, if you want to put your key skills in a simple, let's say 2 or 3 column format, that's probably going to be okay. But what I would avoid is setting up the whole resume in a multiple column format or something that uses tables. Number 2, headers and footers. This is especially the case for your contact information. A lot of times we put our info right at the top of the resume in a header, right? Well, when you think about how the ATS is digesting your information, you realize this could be disastrous. So instead, I would put your information in regular copy. Now, you can make it bigger, you can make it bold, you can center it on the page. Just don't embed it in a header. And number 3, section titles. The more straightforward you make them, the better. What I mean by this is summary, key skills, professional experience versus who I am, what I know, where I've worked. Now, certainly there is a time and a place for creativity in terms of your formatting, in terms of your section headers, in terms of how you set everything up. But what I would do is have a separate version for when you're able to send it directly to a contact or set up like on a portfolio page or a website. Any and every time that you're going through an online application process, use your ATS formatted resume so you maximize your chances for success. It's completely understandable that you would want to choose a resume font that's reflective of your personality or your vibe. And to an extent, you can. But if you choose a font that the applicant tracking system can't read, you are greatly jeopardizing the odds that you'll be called in for an interview. So now is not at all the time to be busting out Slim Joe, Fat Cat, or Porcupine Pickle, which are all 3 custom fonts. You've got to pick something that's a standard PC font, either serif or sans serif fonts. with serif fonts. Now, these are the fonts that have the little flag or the little tail on each letter. These are most often associated with more mature or more conservative audiences. And examples would be Times New Roman or Garamond. Those are very common PC fonts. Sans serif fonts, on the other hand, those are the ones that don't have the little flag on each letter. And these are most often considered more modern or more contemporary fonts. Examples of this would be Arial or Calibri or Verdana. Now, you can mix serif and sans serif fonts on your resume, but if you do so, what I would do is make sure there's a rhyme and a reason to that. So maybe you put the section headers in a serif font and the body copy in a sans serif font or whatever. Just make sure that you're doing something consistently so it doesn't look like you've got a wild mess on your resume. So the bottom line is this. Fonts can really differentiate you, and I can understand why you would want to differentiate yourself through your fonts. Just make sure that this resume is readable to the humans and, importantly, to the machine. This one's going to be a short one. If you're using any graphics, graphs, photos, or logos on your resume, and you plan to apply for any jobs through an online application process, peel them out of there. Or better yet, create a second resume without all of those extras. Hopefully you're getting the clear point by now that all these little pieces of flair, as I like to call them, they don't work well with the applicant tracking system. And if it's not talking to the applicant tracking system, chances are it's going to minimize your chance for success. So I have a story. A while back, I was consulting for a tech startup. They were working on an app that was going to walk people through the job search process, which was really cool. So we got to the module where it was how to scan the resume for the ATS. And we all decided as a team that we were going to take our resumes and put it through the ATS and see what happened. One of our employees, a product manager, he had this just absolutely beautiful resume. I mean, multiple columns, graphics, all these fancy things. And when he put it through the applicant tracking system, guess what happened? Yep, it completely went bust. It wasn't a high match score at all. And he was devastated because he was the one out of all of us that had spent the most time making sure that resume made him a standout. So hopefully that story will make you see and understand that when it comes to the applicant tracking system, on your resume, less is almost always more. Once you've got a handle on all things ATS and you're ready to dive in and either create or edit your resume, now is when you need to decide what structure you're going to use for that new resume. So there are 3 basic styles for resume. Number 1 is called the reverse chronological format. And what this format is something that will begin with your current or most recent job and then back all the way out to your oldest or the earliest role that you're choosing to share on your resume. And then you provide details of each job along the way. Number 2 is a functional resume. And what this does is it lists a lot of your key accomplishments and skills all up at the top of the resume, and then just very quickly mentions the jobs at the end. And the third one is called a hybrid resume. And this is kind of a combination of the two. So in a hybrid resume, you're going to feature some key skills and experiences, things that you want that reviewer to know about you and your value proposition right up front, because that beginning part of your resume, that's really valuable real estate. And then it shifts into what we'll call the reverse chronological format, where you're telling them what you did, when, and where along the course of your career. So which format should you use? Well, in terms of both the ATS and the human reviewer, I would recommend the hybrid format. And here's why. For the human reviewer, again, it makes them easy for them to see right up front the things that you think they're going to be looking for or care the most about as pertains to you as a professional. And in terms of the ATS, it's able to read and scan that format style with ease. Now, you certainly can also use a reverse chronological format, and that's going to probably work really well for the ATS. The problem with that is for the human reviewers, it may be selling yourself short because you're not using an opportunity at the front end to really showcase who you are and why they should pay attention to you. Unfortunately, the functional resume is something that I wouldn't recommend because the ATS is not going to be able to read your information. And frankly, recruiters don't want to see a functional resume because, again, they want to know what you did, when, and where. I will take it one step further and say, as a recruiter, when I see a functional resume, I wonder what's going on. I assume that there's a gap, or I assume there's something that you're trying for me to not see. So I'm going to spend even more time trying to find that thing. So I really would not ever use a functional resume. Now, I truly understand we all have people around us who I'll call them the armchair career coach quarterbacks that are giving you advice on what you should do, what you should include, what your format should be. And honestly, some of that advice is probably pretty good advice. However, just realize that most of the people around you probably don't have any or not much understanding of the ins and outs of how an applicant tracking system works. And so for that reason, the counsel that they're going to give you isn't factoring in that machine review. So if you are choosing a new format or creating a new resume and you want it to be friendly to the humans and friendly to the ATS, absolutely choose a hybrid form. Let's talk about a few tools that might come in handy as you firm up and finalize that resume and send it out into the wild. So as you're getting the resume pulled together, and certainly as you start to apply for jobs, you might be thinking, okay, I think I understand all of this, but do I really have a resume that's a strong fit for the ATS? So I'm going to recommend 3 tools. One of them is actually free. Number 1 is Cultivated Culture. If you're looking for help with layout, Cultivated Culture offers an amazing and free resume building tool. It's really slick. It allows you to choose a template, customize your fonts, headers, colors, and margins, and then download your finished product for free. Resume.io offers a similar tool, and you can download a text file at no cost. However, if you want a PDF or a Word file, and come on, of course you do, it's a few bucks for a 7-day premium membership. Now, if you want to better understand how the ATS will digest your resume, be sure and check out JobScan. It's like an ATS simulation. So you paste or upload your resume into one box, and then you paste the job description into another, and then you hit scan. And within a couple of moments, you'll see what % match you are for that role you're planning to apply for. It's pretty cool. Now, JobScan offers a free option where you get a few free scans a month. However, with that free option, you don't get the option to edit and amend the resume based on any recommendations that the job scan software offers. For that, you do need to have the premium membership, but that one also gives you a lot more scans for any given month. Now, I completely understand that if you're unemployed or underemployed, making any kind of extra investment might be a little bit of a stretch. But what I'll say to that is this: if you're using online applications for either most or all of the jobs that you apply for, having these tools might help you accelerate the time between now and when you land that next great job. And if you can make that go faster, I would say that this would absolutely be worth your while. So I'm going to let you in on a little truth here. You shouldn't be applying for jobs through the applicant tracking system 100% of the time. And here's why. Even if you've optimized your resume for the ATS and stand a reasonable chance of passing through it, you're still at a disadvantage versus another candidate who gets the direct attention of a recruiter or a hiring manager. Because if you think about this from a recruiter standpoint or a hiring manager standpoint, you're probably much more likely going to look at a candidate first who comes in as a referral or vouched for by a colleague or by somebody else that has said, hey, you got to look at this person, versus someone who comes in through this giant stack of resumes through the applicant tracking system. So what I'd say to that is resist the urge to simply apply online and then call her done. Here's what I recommend. Number one, be proactive about leveraging your connections, whether those are your first degree connections or a second degree connection, which is somebody who you have a mutual contact with. Number two, work hard to find and endear yourself to somebody at that company. There are a lot of ways that you can achieve that. First, I would recommend an informational interview. Contact someone and say, I'm really interested in what you're doing. I'm interested in going into this field, or I'm interested in working at this company. May I spend 15 minutes on the phone with you talking a little bit more about your job? Or you can just reach out and find people that are working in your industry at companies of interest and work to endear yourself to them. The easiest way to do that is show genuine curiosity in what they're doing. Reach out and say, I noticed that you're a product manager at this software company. Boy, that looks really interesting to me. May I ask you a couple of quick questions about your work? In fact, I outline some specific tips and techniques on how to do an informational interview and how to leverage your first and second degree LinkedIn connections in my LinkedIn learning course called Job Seeker Tips. It's critical that you understand that it's people who decide on who they're going to hire. Sure, machines help with the process, but when you get right down to it, it's the people that you need to appeal to. And if you can get to them and not rely on the applicant tracking system, you're probably at an advantage. It's also going to give you the opportunity to show them what an amazing human you are.